Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about. The soft hum of autumn winds swirled through the grand courtyard of Windsor Castle as a golden sun dipped low across the horizon. History was in the making once again within those storied walls, as King Charles III extended one of the rarest honors a monarch can bestow, a private showing of the royal collection, curated with precision and reverence across centuries of British heritage. And this time, the guest walking beside him was none other than former U.S. President Donald J. Trump. It was not the first time Trump had set foot in Windsor. Years earlier, he had joined Queen Elizabeth II for a ceremonial tea that had captured headlines worldwide. But this evening was different, infused with the weight of transition and the shimmer of continuity. Charles, now sovereign in his own right, carried with him the steady air of a man determined to define his reign not merely through protocol, but through gesture, narrative, and the ability to bridge cultures. For Trump, who thrived on spectacle and symbolism, this meeting was both personal and political, a blending of his love for grandeur with his instinct for diplomacy on the global stage. A gathering of titans. As the state trumpeters of the household cavalry announced their arrival with a regal fanfare, the former president strode forward in his characteristic manner, upright, confident, his red tie catching the amber glow of the castle's lanterns. King Charles, dressed in a tailored midnight blue suit, extended his hand with the warmth of an old friend. "Mr. Trump," Charles said, his voice steady but softened by the intimacy of the occasion. "Your Majesty," Trump replied, his tone unusually measured, betraying both admiration and awe. The encounter was historic not for its political implications, but for its cultural resonance. The royal collection, paintings, manuscripts, jewels, furniture, and artifacts spanning 500 years, is seldom shown in such depth to outsiders. To be invited into its sanctum, guided personally by the king, was a gesture that signaled respect and trust. Inside the Royal Library. Their tour began in the Royal Library, a sanctuary of knowledge tucked within Windsor's heart. Walls soared high, lined with shelves that gleamed under soft lamplight. Manuscripts bound in cracked leather, ancient maps, and original letters from monarchs past seemed to whisper as the men passed. Charles paused before a glass case. "This," he said, gesturing toward a delicate script, "is a letter written by George III to George Washington. A curious moment in our shared history, don't you think?" Trump leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the flowing cursive ink. "He had beautiful handwriting," Trump quipped, before adding, "George Washington, a tremendous man. He built something very special. And here's the king who lost it. History is fascinating." Charles chuckled lightly, his diplomatic poise unbroken. "Indeed. And yet, the bond between our nations has endured. It is, perhaps, the essence of resilience." Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. For a fleeting moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Two leaders, one hereditary, the other elected, standing side by side, bound by the echoes of history. Masterpieces on display. The next chamber opened into the picture gallery, where masterpieces of Rembrandt, Van Dyck, Rubens, and Canaletto adorned the walls. A hush of reverence fell as they stepped into the room. Charles guided Trump toward a portrait of King Charles I by Anthony Van Dyck. "My namesake," he said with a wry smile. He believed deeply in the divine right of kings. It did not end well for him. Trump nodded. "Yes, but he looked strong. A very powerful presence. I like the outfit, very regal, very commanding. He would have done well on television." The king raised an eyebrow, suppressing a grin. "Perhaps. Though I doubt the BBC was quite ready in the 17th century. They moved on to a Canaletto cityscape of Venice. Trump, surprisingly, lingered longer than expected. "You know, Venice is very impressive. Beautiful canals, but too much water. Terrible for real estate, really. But the art, this is fantastic. Really world-class." Charles used the moment to speak of preservation, his lifelong passion. "Art, architecture, our environment, they are all fragile. We are but caretakers. We pass them to the next generation." Trump, sensing the gravity, nodded. "That's true. You've got to protect what's important. In business, in family, in nations. If you lose culture, you lose everything. Jewels of the Crown. The highlight of the evening came when the king led his guest into a chamber reserved for the most dazzling treasures, the crown jewels on loan for a rare Windsor display. Though the full collection usually resided in the Tower of London, special arrangements had been made. There, under strategic lighting, the imperial state crown glimmered with its nearly 3,000 diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. Trump's eyes widened. That, he said in a low tone, is something else. Nobody makes things like that anymore. Charles regarded the crown with quiet reverence. It is not simply about the jewels. It is about continuity. Every stone tells a story, every gem a witness to coronations, to oaths, to the survival of this institution. Trump leaned slightly closer to the glass, his reflection mingling with the sparkle of the diamonds. It's very impressive. Tremendous craftsmanship. And the history, unbeatable. America has great symbols too, but this is special. Charles seized the opportunity to remind him of shared symbolism. Your Statue of Liberty, for instance. A gift from France, standing as a beacon of hope. Our crown, in a different way, stands for endurance. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. The two men stood in silence for a moment, gazing at the crown, each lost in thought. A toast in St. George's Hall. The tour concluded in St. George's Hall, its vaulted ceilings adorned with coats of arms, its long table gleaming under chandeliers. A private banquet had been arranged, though far smaller and more intimate than a state dinner. Crystal glasses were filled with vintage claret. Silver platters bore roast venison, smoked salmon, and delicacies from the royal kitchens. Raising his glass, Charles offered a toast to the enduring friendship between our nations and to the stories we continue to write together. Trump raised his own. To great allies, great history, and an even greater future. Believe me, it's going to be tremendous. The hall echoed with laughter, the tension of formality easing into camaraderie. The symbolism of the evening. This gathering was more than pageantry. It was a deliberate act of cultural diplomacy. For Charles, it was a chance to underscore his reign's commitment to fostering dialogue beyond politics, using heritage and art as bridges. For Trump, it was an affirmation of his relevance on the world stage, a reminder that, even out of office, his presence commanded global attention. Historians would later remark on the symbolism, the descendant of George III showing George Washington's ideological heir the treasures of monarchy. The king who spoke of duty and continuity engaging the president who personified disruption and reinvention. In a polarized world, Windsor Castle had become, for one evening, a place where contrasts met in harmony. Reflections at the end of the night. As the evening wound down, Trump and Charles stood once more on the castle's terrace, overlooking the twinkling lights of Windsor town below. "You've got a beautiful place here," Trump said quietly, almost sincerely. "Very historic, very strong. It's like America, we both have our symbols, our traditions. People need that." Charles inclined his head. "Yes, because symbols remind us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. We are threads in a tapestry that will continue long after us." For a brief moment, the noise of politics, the weight of legacy, and the rush of ambition fell silent. There were only two men, bound by the currents of history, standing within the walls of one of the world's greatest castles. And as the autumn night deepened over Windsor, the royal collection slumbered once more, its secrets intact, its treasures safeguarded, until the next time a king chose to share them. Subscribe the channel to get such videos.